Head of Communications, Advocacy and Marketing at the World Food Programme. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Jane. First of all, just to clarify, the UN issued this is a new appeal in funding. It's a second appeal. It has only received half the amount of the previous one. Why is that?
Well, I think we're all starting to slowly understand the absolute enormity of the scale of the problem. And that's why we're having to revise our estimate of what is going to be needed in terms of a humanitarian response, and trying to get the government together to understand what they need, what kind of support the UN system can give. And in the last few weeks, even though the virus hasn't hit developing countries yet, or middle-income countries, in the last few weeks, it's become apparent that we've never seen anything like this before. And so, of course, our plans are getting bigger and they will cost a lot of money.
And who pays for this, Jane? Because we're seeing Europe and also the US struggling with their own crisis, and also economic crisis, not just the COVID-19 pandemic.
The amount needed for the humanitarian response is only a tiny fraction of what is already being committed in terms of economic bailout packages, paying unemployment benefit and special leave for those who've lost their jobs in the Western world. And I think we have to think about, the fact that this virus knows no borders. It's an interconnected world now. We know that. We've seen how international travel has helped with the spread. And as it has been said already before, no one is safe until everybody's safe. Mm-hmm. It's not an answer just to allow it to run rife in poor countries which are going to have huge difficulties coping. We've got to see this as a global planet, a global problem for the whole planet.
And given that it should be seen as a global problem for the whole planet, what are your concerns with regards to richer countries as well? Because we've seen in the UK, where you are, food banks under pressure. In the US as well, food banks there, queues of up to miles, people queuing in their cars for food.
Well, as you say, I'm in the UK, and anybody who's lived through this, whether Italy or the US or whatever, it puts huge strain on your own family, on your own living conditions, and real problems. Especially, it's exposing those inequalities between people who have the savings to cope, the wherewithal to get by. But I think certainly at the World Food Programme, we're focusing on the people. We're already feeding or providing food assistance for about 100 million people every year. And they don't have a store cupboard. They don't have any savings. They are living hand to mouth. And we absolutely have to protect the most vulnerable first. As it's becoming clear that the economic lockdown, which is obviously the most effective way of tackling the spread, the lockdown on movement and people going out to work has almost immediate consequences for the poorest of the poor, because they are day labourers. They're people who need to work that day. They're hanging by a thread. So it's only going to be a matter of days or weeks for them. And so I do think that although there is clearly hardship in everywhere where the virus strikes, it's really our moral obligation, and to show a sense of leadership, to show that we can tackle this as a planet together, and that we will not abandon the poorest people who are already in maybe conflict zones, hit by climate change. We just can't forget them or pretend that they're not there, because ultimately there is a certain amount of self-interest that we want stability and peace in the world, and we don't want the problems that are out there. It seems like now, in a faraway land, we don't want them getting worse and worse until the problem ends up on our own doorstep.
Absolutely. Indeed. Jane Howard from the World Food Programme, thanks so much for joining us on the NewsHour. We appreciate your time.